Celebrity Scientologists have always been one of Hollywood's strangest open secrets. For years, the church seemed to have a very specific kind of power in the entertainment industry. Then the public started looking at it differently, and once that happened, the people tied to it got a lot quieter. That shift changed everything, because once Scientology stopped feeling like a quirky celebrity club, people started noticing the control, the secrecy, and the structure behind it. And that's when the real story became impossible to ignore, because this was never just about belief. It was about access, loyalty, influence, and the way famous people could be useful to the church in ways most outsiders never realized. At the center of it all was celebrity power. Scientology didn't just want famous members. It wanted famous members who could bring in other famous members. It wanted people who could make the organization look bigger, more legitimate, and more powerful than it really was. And for a while, that strategy worked. But then the cracks started showing. The public learned more about Scientology, and suddenly the celebrities attached to it had to choose between staying loud or going quiet. Some stayed public, most didn't. And that silence matters, because it tells you something about how the church operates when the spotlight gets too hot. And that's where the network gets really interesting, because a lot of these people are still connected even when they pretend they're not. Some were born into it, some were brought in young, some were pulled in through family, friendships, business ties, or career opportunities. And once you start following those links, the same names keep showing up again and again. One of the biggest examples is Elizabeth Moss. When people hear that she's a Scientologist, it always stops them for a second because of the kinds of roles she plays. She was raised in the church, both of her parents were involved, and she grew up inside the system. She worked steadily in Hollywood for years, but her breakout came with Mad Men, where she played Peggy Olson, a character who became a symbol of ambition and independence. And that's part of what made the conversation around her so intense. On screen, she was playing a woman climbing through a rigid and sexist world. Off-screen, she was tied to one of the most secretive and controlling organizations in Hollywood. For a while, she didn't say much about it publicly, which only made people more curious. Then, in 2022, a New Yorker profile made it clear that she remained committed, and that turned the conversation up again. By then, a lot of celebrity Scientologists had already learned how to talk about the church in softer, safer ways. Not as a major part of their lives, just as something vague and harmless in the background. But Scientology is not really casual in the way people want it to be. It doesn't work like that. The deeper people go, the more it demands. And for celebrities, that can mean something even more important than faith: control over the story. That's why her role in The Handmaid's Tale became such a big deal. The show is built around oppression, control, and authoritarian rule. Moss plays June Osborne, a woman trapped in a brutal system that strips away freedom and identity. For viewers, the contrast was impossible to miss. The role didn't just highlight her talent. It pulled attention back to the church she belonged to, and it raised exactly the kind of questions Scientology hates. How committed is she? How deep does it go? And how much of the public version is actually the real one? But to understand why that matters, you have to look at the broader network around her. Because Scientology in Hollywood is not just about one person at a time. It's about families, managers, producers, acting circles, and people who have known each other for years. It's about who brought who in, who stayed loyal, who quietly stepped back, and who still moves through the same circles even now. That pattern shows up over and over. You see it in the Masterson family. You see it in the Ribisi family. You see it in people like Laura Prepon. You see it in actors who were raised in the church, actors who joined young, and actors who ended up attached to the same web through work, friendship, or marriage. And once you start mapping those relationships, the picture gets bigger. Juliette Lewis is another example. Her family has long been connected to other Scientologists, and that wider family network matters more than most people realize. These are not isolated memberships. These are overlapping circles. People are connected through siblings, spouses, business relationships, and old Hollywood friendships that never really go away. That's why the church's influence can survive even when public interest fades. The public may stop paying attention, but the connections are still there. And those connections often shape careers in ways people don't see. Scientology has always understood that celebrity is a tool. If you can get someone young, or connect through family, or build around someone's ambition, you can create loyalty before they ever become famous enough to question it. That's why acting classes, industry links, and personal introductions have always mattered so much. It's not just about belief, it's about building a pipeline. And once someone is inside that pipeline, they often stay surrounded by the same people for years. Friends become collaborators. Collaborators become business partners. Business partners become family through marriage. And suddenly the whole thing becomes much harder to separate. That's also why so many of the stories around Scientology keep circling back to the same names. Not because the public is obsessed with them for no reason, but because they are all part of the same structure. You can see that structure in the way public appearances are handled. You can see it in how carefully people talk about the church. You can see it in who attends certain events, who avoids certain conversations, and who suddenly gets quiet when the questions get too specific. That silence is often the most revealing part. Because if everything was as casual as it sometimes sounds, there would be no need for the careful language, the distancing, or the strange half-answers. But the reality is that Scientology has spent decades controlling its public image through celebrities, and that means the celebrity side of the church is just as important as the religious side, maybe even more important. And that's what makes this so hard to untangle. The church doesn't just recruit members, it builds relationships, it keeps people connected, it rewards loyalty, it uses access and opportunity to keep the network alive. So when you see one famous Scientologist, you're usually not seeing just one person. You're seeing a whole system of connections behind them. That system includes people who are openly active, people who have quietly stepped back, and people who still remain tied to the same world even if they never discuss it publicly. It includes actors, family members, managers, producers, and longtime friends who all help keep the web intact. And that's the part most viewers miss. It was never just about one celebrity. It was about the entire structure around them, and the way that structure helped Scientology stay connected to Hollywood for so long. The celebrity side of the church wasn't a side story. It was the strategy. And if you understand that, the rest starts to make a lot more sense. Because the names may change, the public image may shift, and some people may step back into silence, but the network itself is still there. And once you see it, you start seeing it everywhere.